thank you for joining us this afternoon for the Booster Fund webinar on details, information, guidance on how to apply to the Booster Fund and a little bit on what community shares means as well. So welcome and thanks for coming along. I'm John Dawson. I'm the Head of Market Development and Investments here at the Community Shares Unit, which is based at Co-operatives UK. The Booster Fund itself is delivered in partnership with ourselves, Co-operatives UK, partners Locality, Plunkett Foundation, Cooperative and Community Finance, as well as our current funders, Power to Change Trust and Architectural Heritage Fund. And we'll be hearing more from Power to Change this afternoon as well. This webinar is going to be recorded, so we should have seen a notification pop up to say that it's being recorded. We will send out the slides to people who were registered on the webinar today, so we'll send those out afterwards, so don't worry about scribbling down everything that we say. You'll be able to look back at those. We'll also put it on the Community Shares website, which is hosted on the Cooperatives UK website as well, so we'll have more information online. You can go back and you can watch this again if you need to as well. So just a quick overview of what we're going to cover. We're going to have a quick introduction from colleague Nicola Wild from Power to Change, who's going to give us an overview of who Power to Change are and why they're interested in community shares. But we'll also cover what a community business is and Power to Change's idea and definition of a community business. We'll come on to look at what are community shares, which my colleague Isla McCulloch will look at. Then we'll look at the Booster Fund, and Rose Seagrief is with us, who manages our Booster Fund, who will be giving you details on how to apply and what the Booster Fund priorities are. And then we'll come back to Isla to give a bit more information on the Community Shares Standard Mark, which is one way of assuring that your community shares documentation when you go out to market is of a good quality and that it has had an external assessment and verification of the standards of those. So Isla will look at those. We've got a few examples today of previous community share offers that we've invested in, as well as examples of other share offers to give you an idea of the sorts of organisations that Booster has funded in the past and to give you an idea of who we might be interested in funding in the future. And we'll come on to look at some top tips, some questions and some answers. You may have already noticed Projects Manchester in the previous slide. They're one of the past Booster investees. They're a city centre community-run skate park in the centre of Manchester that we invested around £67,000 as matched equity investment to help get their share off the ground a few years ago, to give you an example of one of the types of organisations that we've supported. Now, if I just pass you on to Nicola, who's going to give you an overview. Nicola is from Power to Change, and she'll give you an overview of Power to Change and community business. Nicola, over to you.
Thanks, John. Hi, as John said, my name's Nicola Wild. I'm a programme manager at Power to Change, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the organisation, the programmes that we run, and what we mean by community business. So Power to Change were established in 2015 with a £150 million endowment from the National Lottery Community Fund. We were due to close in 2022. However, in response to the impact of the COVID pandemic, we realised that community businesses really needed us more now than ever, and we received a further £20 million from NLCF to set up a new 5-year strategy to continue supporting the sector. Next slide, please, John. So this is our mission at Power to Change, which is to strengthen community businesses to tackle some of society's biggest challenges at a local level, including the 3 biggest challenges of our time: climate change, digital transformation, and social inequality. Next slide, please. So Power to Change work in a variety of ways, but these are some of the things that we do. We conduct research to kind of measure the impact of community businesses and the sector. We influence policymakers, invest in community businesses. We offer peer-to-peer support and strengthening capacity, as well as supporting the sector with free digital tools. Next slide, please. So what is a community business? This is how we define it. This is what we mean. So we're locally rooted. Community businesses are started by local people that will benefit the community around them. They're accountable to the local community. So the local community have a genuine say in the business and how it's run. They trade for the benefit of the local community. So that's selling services and products in and around their local area. And then finally, the broader community impact. So community businesses engage with a variety of different groups in their community and address different community needs. So they may have a specific focus on a disadvantaged group or support the local community more widely. Next slide, please. So these are our current programs at Power to Change. We've currently got 6 on the go and I work on 3 of them. I'll just give you a kind of brief overview of them. So firstly, we've got Community Business Crowd Match. With Crowd Match, we provide an incentive to maximise crowdfunding campaigns by match funding what you can raise from a crowd fund. And that's up to £10,000 to support new and existing community businesses. That closes down on the 30th of June. Next, we've got Leading the Way, which is a tailored learning programme to support the development and impact of enterprises in the northeast of England and also in the Yorkshire and in the Humber area. Next, we've got Community Business Trade Up, which we've just relaunched and is open to applications at the moment. So Trade Up provides community businesses with the skills, support, networking and funding to increase income from trading, run in partnership with the School for Social Entrepreneurs. We've also got Powering Up, just for community businesses who need support shifting from an emergency mindset to investing in future planning. The initial phase provides support for improving digital skills in the sector. Financial Capabilities supports community businesses in managing their organisation's finances with the hope of making them more resilient and sustainable in the long term. This is delivered by our partners Locality and the Women's Organisation. And then finally, we've got Community Shares Booster Fund, which you're all here to learn more about today. John, final slide, please. So finally, I just want to give a bit of an overview in terms of the impact of Power to Change since we were established in 2015. So we've given out over £100 million in funds, in 2,600 grants to 1,724 unique community businesses that have been given our support. 67% of our funds have gone to 30% of the most deprived areas in the country. And then finally, something which really highlights, I think, the impact of Power to Change. There were 5,500 community businesses in 2015, and in 2020, there were 11,300, which is wonderful. So that's everything from me. Back over to you, John.
Great, thanks, Nicola. We now just have a very short video which we thought might be useful to hear from one of the community share offers that's happened in the last few years, but also one that Booster supported both through a development grant to get off the ground and prepare their share offer, but also through equity match, where we invested around £60,000 against money that they raised from the local community, which was invested into the mill to refurbish the mill. And that saw over 200 people from the local community put their own money into Warwick Bridge core mill because they believed in the plans there. And this was just around the time of the pandemic kicking off, and it helped them raise capital, but also it made them realise that they had to reflect quite quickly on their business model as things adapted and as there was a sudden rush for flour and people wanting to bake bread at that point of the pandemic. But we'll move on to the video. Hopefully, technology willing, we'll be able to play this and you should be able to hear this.
What's so unique about this building itself is it's one of the last of its kind in Cumbria and indeed across the UK. Cumbria used to have in excess of 7,000 mills over only 2 generations ago. Now there's just a handful left. And the current mill behind me was built in the 19th century. and that's the one that's been restored back to how it was. The mill equipment here is the same equipment that was running over 200 years ago. So that makes it special, and it makes Warwick Bridge special because the mill is here.
In its latest incarnation, it first started out because the local charity based in Newcastle identified the building as having great potential for restoration, and they raised the funding through the Heritage Lottery Fund, and we were approached to potentially lease the mill and run a bakery from the site. We collectively decided that it would be nicer for it to be a community-led project and have the community involved.
We chose to open up a community share offer because we felt that this heritage building was something that the community should be involved in. Involvement really comes through ownership. One of the advantages of being a shareholder is that you are actually supporting and making something work as lain dormant for the last 2 generations. It's actually providing an opportunity for volunteering, it's providing great locally produced products and employing people here in the community.
The idea was to raise £120,000 so that we could get the business off the ground. We've raised all of that money and the share offer has been fully subscribed. So nobody can buy any shares. We have people lining up now waiting to buy shares. So as the shares, people can trade them back to us and we can sell them again.
Well, to be a member of our community business and to be a shareholder is a real opportunity. It does become all-encompassing. Once you get drawn in, once you see the mill working, once you see the production actually happening, it draws you in and it becomes part of your life.
Being a shareholder of the mill, you get that sense of involvement in the community and in keeping the mill running. And it's also given me other experiences. I do markets, I man market stalls now, which was a thing I never thought I would ever do. Going out and selling on a Saturday in the centre of Carlisle. And during COVID, that's been quite helpful. It gets you out and gets talking to people. Not working, you tend not to meet people if you're retired in COVID. So it's been quite a good that way, yes.
Well, the social impact of Warwick Bridge Coal Mill is really been brought into sharp focus by the current COVID crisis. When we first started and launched up, an immense amount of people were coming to us and saying, when are you going to start making flour? Because at that point, we hadn't started milling at all. And people were knocking on the door and saying, can you make flour? Can you provide flour? Because we can't get it anywhere else. So it gave us a real boost right at the start, where we were able to make flour and people were able to see what we were doing, that it draws us together as a community, that people will get to know each other, we'll be able to form friendships and partnerships going forward.
There we are. I hope that was just a useful little insight of what it's like to run a share offer. And I think that emphasises quite nicely that it's not just all about raising large amounts of money. It's also about what happens in your community when you run a share offer and the power of bringing people together as active owners within a community business as a way of getting them involved in the running of the business as well, and as a long-term commitment to be customers and users of the business as well, and potentially volunteers. So if we move on now, I'm just going to hand you over to Isla now.
Hi everyone, so my name is Isla McCulloch. I'm the Community Share Standards Manager at Co-op UK. Just to give you a little bit more background on community shares in the unit and the support we provide as well. So community shares, the Booster Fund is all about supporting community share offers. So it's really important that we know what they are. Community shares in itself is a unique form of raising finance, specifically for co-ops and community businesses. And since 2012, we know that more than £200 million has been raised this way by over 126,000 people. And this is across Scotland, Wales, England, Northern Ireland as well. A lot of this work is led by, as we said, the Community Shares Unit, which is a partnership between Co-op UK, Locality and the Plunkett Foundation. And we have lots of information on our website that you can have a look at, the links there, or you can find it on the Co-op UK website as well. if we go to the next slide, John, I'll do a bit of technical stuff. So community shares are not like company shares, and this is really important. To answer, there was a question in the Q&A from Nikki about, in terms of local accountability, community shares are essentially a term we've coined for withdrawable but non-transferable share capital in co-op and community benefit societies. So within this legal structure, there is an accountability built into that mechanism. The members become, the shareholders and investors become real members with one member, one vote in the organization. So I know Power to Change support a lot of different types of community business structures, but it's worth acknowledging for the Booster Fund, because of the society model that is required to be able to issue community shares, that accountability is pretty much built in to the model. Which maybe makes it simpler, but also means if you're already constituted in this different way, you can have a chat with us. We do work with other organisations who are looking to convert maybe from companies limited by guarantee or CICs into society models. But yeah, just to be clear, community shares are a form of equity unique to co-op and community benefit societies. You can offer an interest rate on these shares, but it has to be only sufficient enough to attract and retain the investment. So the investment made, as you'll have seen in the Warwick Bridge one, is primarily a social investment before it's a financial investment. They're non-transferable, so they can't be traded and they don't go up in value. The shares don't go up in value, but they are withdrawable. So it's not a donation. Once invested, the members can request to withdraw their capital. And the society only has to enable that withdrawal if they can afford to. So it's still equity. As we said, it's one member, one vote. So based on the cooperative principles, all investors only have one vote, regardless of the size of their shareholding, which is in contrast to company shares, where it's one share, one vote. So they're very democratic. So yeah, I think that does answer the question around accountability really clearly, that by using this model, we're really about embedding that membership and democratic ownership, whether that's of a business, like the Warwick Bridge kind of example with the trading, or ownership of a building, a hub, a pub, hub, or venue. This can be, there's loads of different examples. It's, we're not discriminating based on sector. The vast majority of community share offers to date have been in things like community shops, community pubs, and community energy schemes. But they can be used for a variety of things. So it can be in terms of fixed assets and taking ownership of assets, but it's also really helpful for raising sort of flexible working capital, startup costs, whether that's staff and stock, etc. Because you need some sort of business plan to issue community shares, and there is the potential for financial return, we generally don't see community share offers used for early stage development, feasibility, or exploratory costs, as that tends to be a lot more high risk, and we're not sure whether that business is going to go anywhere. And our grant funding can be used to help develop business plans, and there's other funds available to do that really early stage feasibility stuff. But generally, it's very flexible. And as the Booster Fund, as Rose will go into more detail, we invest on the exact same terms as the community. So although Power to Change has granted us the money, there are not the same restrictions. You're able to spend that money as you're spending the rest of the money you're raising through shares in a way that's flexible and suits the needs of your business as you set out in the business plan. So I'll pass over to Rose now, who's going to do a wee bit more on the fund and how the Booster Fund works. Thanks.
Nearly forgot to unmute. Thanks, Isla. I'm Rose Seagrief. I'm the program manager of the Booster Fund, and really excited that we've launched a new Booster Fund, particularly because now we're able to support groups at the very early stages of exploring a community share offer and whether it's the right choice for them, as well as taking them right through planning a community share offer and being ready to launch, or in some cases recently launched, and then we're able to offer match equity to boost their offer and get over the finishing line. Having that early stage support, as Isla said, it's not something community share offers are raised for, but we're really keen that groups that really haven't embarked on this kind of thing before get all the help they need. John, if you could move on to the next slide, please. So there's a range of funding available through the fund. There's business development support. Now, this is for those who need to access specialist and professional support to help when you're exploring an early stage idea, to be sure that community shares are the right thing for you and to get your community business properly set up. And it's awarded at the booster fund's discretion, normally once we've seen an expression of interest, but potentially even before you've made any kind of formal application. Again, we want to encourage people to apply. So just contacting us and we can talk things through is entirely acceptable. When you get to the next stage, there are development grants on offer. They will range from about £2,000 to £10,000. 10,000 is the maximum to enable a project to get investment ready. So your organization is really able to take on investment. So you can get support to develop your business plan around your community engagement work, look into your governance structure and potentially legally register your organization if you haven't registered yet or you need to change to a co-op or a community benefit society. We can help you develop your share offer documents, do promotional work for your campaign, and also support you to get the standard mark assessment costs covered. And then for equity match funding, we can match pound for pound up to a maximum of £25. Probably will average more like 20. And matched equity is subject to how much the offer raises from the community investors. And Booster cannot invest more than 50% of the total share capital held by the society. That's really important. We can never invest more than community investors themselves invest. And the offer must reach the minimum target when Booster Fund match is included. And in addition, if we do invest in you, you get 1 year's free membership of Co-operatives UK, which gives you access to a whole range of support and advice related to the running of your society. And we continue a relationship with you over time. So that's the basic bones. And then let me move on to the next slide and tell you what our priorities are. We're looking to fund projects of all kinds. So it could be to create something like a community hub or projects that help revive high streets. Could be people reviving and taking ownership of local assets, particularly areas in high disadvantage, or projects to protect services in the local area that people really rely on and are addressing local needs. And we encourage and welcome applications from people from all backgrounds who are looking to make a real difference to the lives of the people in their communities. As it says, we're trying to support groups that haven't really applied before. So
Oh, I think we might have just lost you for a moment there, Rose.
Okay.
Oh, you're back.
Am I back?
You're back.
Oh, I'm sitting in the Orkney Islands right now, and sometimes the connections are a bit dodgy. By minoritized ethnicities, we mean individuals and communities who've been minoritized in a UK context through political and social discrimination and barriers that they face. And then young people, we mean those under the age of 35. You lucky wee things, being so young. John, could we move on? And who are we looking to support? We're looking to support community businesses that demonstrate higher than average levels of community impact, innovation and engagement. So new ones and existing community businesses in England. You must have a clear charitable purpose in the project that you're doing, though you don't have to be a charity as an organization. And we're looking to support community businesses that need support to develop and prepare their share offers. And you must be able to show how those share offers are going to meet local needs and have positive impact. And we also need you to be willing to engage with the standard mark assessment process, because actually having really high quality, clear, transparent share offers is really very important. And then we supporting those who are looking for equity match. So we can support people at all stages of this process. And if you're not quite ready to apply yet, we can offer business development support, and please contact us. So how to apply is the next thing to tell you about. Now, all of those dots on those maps are places we've invested in. There are gaps. There's plenty of space for more. So we hope you're going to be applying. And how you do that, John, if you could move on to the next slide. As first and foremost, just go and have a look at the website, www.uk.coop/booster fund. You'll find detailed guidance there. Do read it. It's really worthwhile. All of the questions that are asked in the expression of interest form, the grant application form, and the equity application form are all laid out in full with guidance. And within the application form as well, there is guidance to help you to go along. And you might find it helpful to draft your questions and cut and paste them into the application. And you don't need to complete your application in one go. You can actually save it and come back to us. So please read your guidance carefully, then complete the expression of interest. And if you're at a very early stage or you're having any difficulty with the application, please get in touch. Just email us at communityshares@uk.coop and we'll help you as much as we can. And then what happens? The first thing happens is we'll score and review your expression of interest form. The scoring is a means for us to rank things and to compare like with like. We'll aim to get people back to people within 2 weeks to invite you to make a full application or potentially to offer you business support. You must be aware that it's a competitive process and funds are limited. So we can't fund all projects, not even all the really good ones, if they don't meet our priorities or other applications meet them better. So much as we'd love to fund everything we receive, we can't. For full applications and grants and equity applications, decisions are usually made within 8 to 12 weeks, but can be quicker if we know there's real urgency. When we receive your full application, if there's any further information we need before the application goes to intensive assessment, we'll probably give you a phone call. And my colleague, another John, who you can't see, will probably have a chat with you. And potentially we might come back to you if the panel themselves has any questions. And finally, applications go to the booster panel where the final decision is made, whether to award a grant or equity investment or not. So if you could move on. And I'm handing over to Isla to talk about standard marks, so you know a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. So yeah, Rose mentioned that as part of the development grant, we are very happy, or even the BDS pot potentially, to fund the award of the community share standard mark to share offers. So community shares as a way of raising finance from the public is unregulated through the prospectus requirements of the Financial Services and Markets Act, which in shorthand means that it's very readily available and cheap and accessible for community groups to raise funds from the public in this way. But we have an agreement with the Financial Conduct Authority and the government that the basis for that lack of formal regulation or statutory regulation is that we have a voluntary regulatory framework called the Community Share Standard Mark. So it's essentially a framework and a massive checklist that a licensed community shares practitioner is able to run through all your documentation, your share offer document, application form, business plan, and your rules, your governing documents, to make sure that it's all clear and easy to understand and not misleading. We know the vast majority of community shares investors earn the average UK income or less, based on some surveying we've done. And we also know that most of them don't really consider themselves sophisticated investors. Most of these are ordinary folk who support your mission, support your business. So we need to make sure that they have the facts they need to make that decision and that it's clear and simple for them to understand. All of these standards are overseen by the Cooperative and Community Capital Committee, which is a member group of Co-ops UK that has representatives from the sector, our practitioner base, and legal and financial experts on board as well. So there's good feedback mechanisms on improving the standards. Also, a lot of this best practice is laid out in the Community Shares Handbook, which we will link over to you as well, which is a real great Bible of information on all things you need to know when running a community share offer and your legal responsibilities, as well as best practice that's been built up over the years. Also on our website, you've got the Community Shares Practitioner Directory. So you can find a practitioner, but if you're putting in an application through the Booster Fund, either that might have come through support from a practitioner in the first place, or if you need a hand sourcing a practitioner, we can help you with that as well. And as Rosa said, those costs can all be covered by the development grant. So there's no excuse not to do it. I'll pass it back over.
Thanks, Isla. I think we're just going to come on to a few case studies now that Rose is going to talk us through. If you do have any questions, I've seen a few have come in. We'll come to these at the end if we don't answer them in the text, but we'll pick them up at the end. But there's a Q&A box you can put questions in, or if you've got any comments, please put them in the chat as well. Okay, Rose, over to you.
Oh, slightly take me by surprise. That picture you see there is Nudge Community Builders in Plymouth trying to rescue an old cinema Millennium building, and they're renovating the ground and second floors. And we supported them with a grant of 100,000, with equity investment of 100,000, and they raised, I think, 380,000 from a lot of investors. But that's not the one I'm going to talk about. John, could you move on to the next slide? Latch is a wonderful project based in Leeds. If you could move on, John, where the Latch, which is Leeds Action to Create Homes, is buying derelict buildings and renovating them for people to live in. We gave them a £10,000 grant just to support them to work on their governance and the business plan share offer, and they actually had to readjust their rules to make this work possible. They achieved the community shares mark, and they raised £500,000 to support them to purchase on an annual basis a number of derelict homes, which are renovated by teams of local people who've been unemployed, creating opportunities for work, creating real futures for people and supporting them not only through a home, but through training and additional support. It's a phenomenally exciting project for me and has made really, really already big differences to people's lives. And having the share offer gave the organization the security for a couple of years not to be chasing money all the time. So it's, I think, taken a lot of pressure off the organization, as well as having enormous benefit. John, if you could move on. The Tech in Holmfirth. This was originally a building built, I think, in the late 1890s as a place of education for all sorts of creative arts, and had all kinds of industry going on in it. And it then changed into a school, and then it became part of a community college, and it was going to be closed down and ceased to deliver a lot of the services it had offered before. And we provided £10,000 just to develop the basic documents and get ready and achieve the community share community share standard mark. And their share offer was entirely successful. They got 75,000 in all from a combination of Power to Change and the Architectural Heritage Fund. The Architectural Heritage Fund contributes some monies towards a booster project for specific projects that are on high streets and that are helping revitalize high streets and communities, and that are of particular historic interest. And what that investment enabled was the Holmfirth Tech to take over the building. They'd part bought it, and to redevelop all sorts of areas and build on extensions and so on. And it's now back offering a whole range of activity and really making a difference, as you see in that previous slide. You know, just recently, we had a meet and greet here for Ukrainian families that are settling into the valley. The place was heaving, and it was wonderful. I love comments like that. It's why we do what we do. And then moving on to the next one, as Nicola commented to me, she loves that picture. You have people basking in this probably very warm pool because it's geothermal, and then you realize it's Cornwall. You look at the clouds in the background. This is an iconic local, well, not local, but I mean of national importance, if not international importance, this Jubilee pool, and it's had a really difficult time. It's in a very vulnerable place, and many years ago it was there were suggestions of redeveloping it, and the community objected and raised funds to save it. And then there was a colossal storm, I think in 2014, that started undermining the foundations. So a lot of effort was made to rescue it. And then in could we move on, John? Thank you.
Sorry.
That's all right. They needed to redevelop the pool. They needed to renovate all the changing rooms and make it much more financially viable and make the cafe work better and so on. And they raised a huge amount of money, really, 538,000 plus from 1,380 investors, with 75,000 pounds from Power to Change and Architectural Heritage Fund, and then had an additional share offer sometime later to recover from COVID, because they had to close down a lot. And now the pool's open all year round, with great changing facilities and showers, and a much more viable cafe and so on that keeps them going. So these are the kind of things, you know, a huge variety, and over above all of these, there are many, many other projects that we've pictured as we've gone through, grocers, growing, pubs, shops, and so on. And we encourage anyone to have a go and get in touch with us, or look and put in an expression of interest. It's worth giving it a whirl and trying to achieve some of these wonderful things. And I have a few top tips for you. Please read the guidance. Everything we put in there is there to help you. And when you're responding to things, do make them as short and sharp as you can. Don't write essays. One of the expressive interests we've had recently, I still don't know what the project is that this funding is being sought for. Be really careful, reread what you've put to make sure that if somebody hadn't read this before, they'd understand what you're getting at. And just use bullet points. You don't have to write lots and lots of prose. But if you're not sure, please just get in touch. Contact Community Shares at uk.coop, that should be, and we'll do our very best to help you. And I think that's it from me.
Great, thanks, Rose. And I really like that about Jubilee Pool. There are almost 1,400 investors there. People aren't just users of a sports facility there or community facility, but they can actually jointly own it. It's in their interest to keep using it and to encourage others to keep using it as well. So that's brilliant. Thank you. Some lovely examples throughout that. We have had a few questions come in. If I start with one that's come in, was how long does a share offer take? Maybe if I come to you, Isla, on that one.
It's a little bit how long's a piece of string. Depends when you start and where we're counting from. So some projects take years to get off the ground till they're ready to raise shares as the final piece in their jigsaw puzzle in terms of the funding. And then some offers get turned around in a matter of months, maybe due to real urgency to secure an asset or a business, or just a lot of people with a lot of time to really focus and get things off the ground. So from our perspective, we tend to see applications come in if they already have a good business plan in place and they've maybe had some support or just some time to develop that, then they'd be looking to launch the share offer in, say, 3 or 4 months. We tend to see standard mark awards take on average between 4 and 6 weeks to really get all the documents in ship shape and then get to the designers and get beautifully designed up and published for the offer to launch. But really, I think that question, I can't answer it. It really depends on where you are. And if you are not sure what stage you're at and you'd like a bit of a chat with the team in terms of what you need in terms of next steps to take it to the next stage, or am I ready to launch the share offer yet, or should we do a bit more first, then please get in touch. We definitely know all the offers that have been going as a campaign potentially before launching the offer tend to be much more successful. If you've already built that groundswell of support around what you're doing from the community, the share offer is just an opportunity to catalyze all that enthusiasm and excitement into an investment and membership. And you don't want to be starting from scratch with converting people to your great idea and solution once the offer is live. So the more you can do beforehand, the more effective and successful I think your share offer would be. So it's not always about rushing into it. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Isla. Quick question has come in from Davina asking, is there a replay because she missed the beginning of the button? All being well, if we press the right button on this, then we have recorded this. So yes, there will be a replay. We'll send out the link and we'll post it online as well. So you'll be able to re-watch it, and we'll send out the slides as well. There's been a couple of questions come in about disadvantage. I know, Rose, you mentioned this and picked up a bit in the presentation. I don't know if it's worth us just circling back to it. A question more specifically, which source for IMD does the panel use?
We just use the UK government's IMD indices for multiple deprivation, but it's worth noting that that's not going to be the only criteria we look at. So while Power to Change do have a priority for IMD 1 to 3, we recognise that different communities face different disadvantages. So it's just one part of the puzzle when we're looking at the broader picture. So yeah. There was also a question about in the chat about co-op eligibility that I'd like to just quickly come back to. So you have to be, because in the UK you can be a co-op but be a company limited by guarantee or shares. You know, there's different legal structures you can adopt to be a co-op. As I said, we definitely need to be a cooperative society. And we do accept applications from co-op societies that are set up primarily to benefit their co-op members. But if you're doing a community share offer, then you will have had to really consider who are this community that would be willing to invest in you, and that would be, you know, supporting in your social aims and potentially benefiting as well. So while it's definitely a much smaller fraction of our applications that come in from co-op societies, that in itself is not a reason not to apply. But yes, we'd like to see definitely broader community benefit. But if that also involves, like, you know, good worker empowerment as part of that business model, we're definitely open to seeing those approaches as well. But you would have to be a society, as John Harrison said. There was a question, I think Rose covered it, in terms of we're not going to use up the funds quickly. We don't want to invest everything all at once. That would not be great for our programme and would be really, really difficult to manage. So yes, there's no rush, but like she said, the earlier we hear from you, probably the better, because in the last round of funding, we definitely had applications that came in sort of at the beginning, and the equity investment was made near the end of our 3-year phase of funding, just because of how much time it can take for projects to progress and things. So the more we're involved early on, the better we can support with that as well.
Thanks, Isla. Sorry, I suddenly got ejected from the webinar. I'm not quite sure what happened. There was a question, do I have to raise any certain amount in terms of share capital? I don't know, Rose, maybe one for you?
How much you raise is entirely up to you and dependent on the nature of your project. In terms of what we can support, we can only support up to half of what you raise, and there'll be a certain minimum amount it's possibly not worth us investing in, which perhaps is something like 15 or 20,000 pounds, or 10 to 15,000 pounds. So you'd need to raise at least twice that. But we don't expect you to have raised anything before you start a share issue. That's right, isn't it, Isla?
Okay, thanks both. And then Nicola, I don't know if you wanted to come in on the question about community accountability and the community business definition, that's being one of the 4 characteristics of it. Sorry, you're on mute, Nicola.
Sorry about that. So is this in response to the question that I answered in the chat? Yeah. So it's really just about being able to demonstrate how the organisation is governed and what it does and how that's connected to the community. So it's there's no kind of hard or fast rule, but it's just being able to truly demonstrate community engagement and how you talk about kind of just really connecting with the community.
Okay, thank you. I don't know, did we cover the question about how long the fund is open for? Rose, if I come to you.
It's open for three years. The funding goes on. John, you'll need to remind me the number of equity awards we're likely to make over the course of the year. Is it 7 or 8?
It's around that amount, yeah, per year. So there isn't necessarily a rush to get an application in.
And then the number of grants we award will probably be higher, and then the business development awards are on a fairly ad hoc basis, but we'll probably make quite a lot of those as and when they're required.
And we'd much rather see applications that are in a reasonable shape. So do work with either ourselves or work with a registered community shares practitioner, which you can find on the community shares website, to help you get an application into a good shape. Because I think that will really help in terms of us understanding what it is you want to do. Kevin, you've asked, is this the source of IMD that you used 2019 statistics? I think that looks about right.
Yeah, I said that's the one we'll use, and the postcode lookup for that. But I think we do appreciate that it's definitely a bit more nuanced than IMD. It's worth reiterating that as well when we're assessing applications.
It's definitely about the area of your impact as well. I know some IMD postcodes can border different types of areas, so it's not always completely straightforward. And we can look at the breakdown of IMD as well if it's a bit blurred. The top line.
Yeah.
Sometimes things like access to services or transport or other opportunities is more detailed when you break down the IMD.
Definitely.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm seeing any other questions in there. So if that's all,
Rose did earlier mention something about we need to meet the minimum target in order to invest. I think it'd probably be useful if you could elaborate just a little bit on that, because I know we have had in the past applicants that have been a bit confused by the targets.
So I think first, I know it can be confusing. So the whole point is your minimum target when you design your share offer is the minimum you need for the project to proceed. So we need to know that our money is being invested and that the project will succeed. So if your minimum is 100,000 and you need £100,000 to proceed, we will only, we can offer you the investment sort of in principle, and then that will all go ahead once you've reached 75 from the community and 25 from us, equating 100 altogether. That's the easiest way to think about it, is what is the minimum target that you set for the project to proceed, and will our match equity alongside the community's equity enable you to reach that minimum target. You don't need to reach the minimum target from your community before we come in on top of that target, which I think is where the confusion often lies. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for joining today. If there are any other questions, do send them in via email and open a discussion with us. We'd be happy to talk to you about them. And also you can see the guidance online, which we refined from the past booster guidance. It is a lot clearer and a lot more streamlined now as the application process, so do please take advantage of that. And yes, hopefully we'll see some of you putting in some applications. So thank you very much for joining us, and I hope you have a good day, and we'll share these slides in this presentation afterwards. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.